Washington leads us in the invocation, to be followed by the singing of the national anthem by Terry and Harris, and then the pledge of allegiance. Have a motion.
First of all, Mr. Mayor, Aldermen, staff, it really is a privilege and an honor to be invited to come and to bring the invocation. I want you to know that each of you, have my respect and my admiration, that you've been willing to stand in the gap, to step up and be leaders in this community, this county, and this state. I think these are among the most difficult of times. Our founding fathers, you read anything that was written back then, you find that our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs and principles. That's no longer the case. You probably are all very aware of this. Today we're called a post-Christian nation. 90% of all Americans say they believe in God, but 70% say it doesn't make any difference, doesn't have anything to do with my daily life. 50% of young people, and some of you know this from children and grandchildren, 50% of young people today, when asked what religion they are, basically one word: nothing, nothing. These are difficult times, challenging times to lead. And so not only will I pray with you here tonight, but I assure you I will continue praying for you as you lead in this community, in this county, in this state. So will you pray with me? Our Father and our God, we want to humble ourselves before you tonight. We acknowledge that it is you who created us and sustains us, and not we ourselves. Lord, I believe that you have a future for each one of us, a future of good and not of evil. I also pray and believe that you have a bright future for this city. Give these men and women, our mayor and aldermen, your wisdom to be able to learn from the past and not lament it, to learn from mistakes that may have been made without being critical of those who made them. And Lord, give each member of this board a spirit of unity and a hunger for a collective vision, a vision of a shining city, a city that is a desired destination for businesses, for families, and for individuals. And to that end, we are reminded that our God is a warrior. Exodus 15:3 says precisely that. And so, God, I pray that you will give these women and men strength of character to be able to fight hard and well, to fight for each other and not with each other, to lead in fighting for our citizens. Lord, give them clarity and energy to attack the problems that we face today. God, we are also reminded that each one of us is made in your image. Therefore, give us grace to value one another as you do. In a nation that is horribly polarized, where many think that theirs is only and always the right way, I pray that you will infuse these leaders with the freedom to be men and women of confidence and conviction, but at the same time to welcome each other's ideas and the ideas and concerns of the citizens of Spring Lake. May this board be known as one who embraces a richness of ideas, like the beauty of a glorious rainbow and all of its radiant colors. May it be a board that out of their discussions and debates receives your discernment, our God, to forge appropriate compromises and plans for Spring Lake's future that reflect your wisdom, your beauty, your glory, and your love. In your name we pray together. Amen. Amen.
say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave? Woo!
Pledge of allegiance.
Oh.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are at item number 5, any additions or deletions to the agenda? Alderwoman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add to the agenda that we have our auditors that we're paying $16,000, both to town managers as well as the league, to come out and give us a presentation for the citizens and the board.
You want to add that to the agenda?
Yes, yes, sir. When we can get a date for them to come out.
Okay,
We have requested it prior, but.
so that's to be added to the agenda?
I want to know a date, when we can have them to come out, we can discuss it. Did somebody receive a letter, or what's the update with them coming out?
Well, we could task, Mr. Watson, Mr. Jeff.
Yes, I sent an email out today, and I picked, I think, 4 dates, and I can add that to that agenda as well.
4 days for what?
4 dates for Harold Owens to come in and talk, but we can
For
also
auditors?
add the auditors too. We can add the auditors to that.
Right.
Yep,
What
yes,
else?
ma'am, okay.
Alderwoman Jackson and then Alderwoman Cooper. Oh, you didn't, Alderwoman Cooper.
I believe that letter you sent out, the email you sent out was about the, gentleman from the League of Municipalities come and talk about, the charter, right?
Correct.
I thought we discussed that in our special meeting, and we said that we wanted to revisit the charter after we got all of our finances together. That's what I thought we said we discussed in the meeting, so, I think what, Alderwoman Sutherland, correct me if I'm not wrong, she wants a presentation at a board meeting for
Right.
the community and, the board.
That's what we did, the emails that went out, for the 5th, 6th, I think 15th and 16th, those meetings were gonna be at 7 o'clock.
Well, let's do this. Let's This is to add or delete from the agenda. Let's just add this discussion as 10B.
Yes, sir.
10B.
Thank you.
Any other additions or deletions? Alderwoman Sullivan?
Yes, sir, as well as if you look at the minutes for January the 13th, as we just discussed, talking about the charter, it is not all in with that special meeting that what we had spoke about concerning, even the conversations that we had had, if you go back and read them. So I think that, I don't know if they were taped or how they were done, but everything is not in that special meeting that was discussed, as well as the clarification about the charter, that we had said that, we're gonna wait before we, try to get that charter changed, and it's not in your statement.
So are you suggesting that we,
Those minutes are not correct.
that, okay, that we delete, okay, item B under consent items?
Yes, sir.
Okay, pending correction.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Alderwoman Cooper?
Yes, I'd also like to delete 9E, the quarterly finance update, because I'd like to start getting a detailed report with the packet, because we come in here the day of the meeting and we're presented with all of this information that we don't have time to go over. So I don't even have a chance to even say whether I agree with what's in it or not. So I'd like to delete that from the agenda.
Item 9E.
Yes, and going forward, anytime there are presentations, I'd like to have some type of time to go over it so that I can ask questions.
Any other additions or deletions? Is there a motion to approve? Alderwoman Cooper?
I make a motion that we approve the agenda with said correction.
Alderwoman Sullivan?
I'll second that motion.
Moved and second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, sign of nay. Okay. We're down to item 8, public forum. We have one person sign up to speak. Mr. Dela Cruz, approach and give us your name and your address for the record, please.
Efren Dela Cruz, 40 Summertime Road, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Mayor, came here a few weeks ago and I spoke. I just want to make sure everybody understands. I didn't mean disrespect if you felt that way. I just was concerned with the hiring process, okay, with the city manager's position. Now, I know everybody on this board. I've never met you, Mr. Gerald, ever before, and you're probably a nice guy. I have nothing against you. I mean, this has nothing to do with you. The fact is, you were fired, and the vacancy came up, and I applied for the job, and I was one of the top 3 candidates to get the position. And as a former military police officer, I felt that, you know, my experience would bring a lot to the table for the town manager position. And I studied for the position. You know, I got myself prepared. I got the budget. I did all the things right, you know, to apply for the job. And you know, one of the things that really gets me upset is that the whole time, some of the board members already knew that they weren't going to hire any of the candidates that they selected. Okay, they selected Mr. Cox, okay, who was fired, who was under indictment for something that he did, I think impersonating a police officer. He was one of the top 3
Yes, sir.
candidates.
Mr. Dela Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just a slight, quick point of order.
Yes, sir.
Wonder if you could ask the gentleman to not disclose any confidential personnel information that he might be aware of.
Sir, that's public record. You can Google it. It's not anything that's private or it's information you can just Google and find for yourself. Anyhow, the bottom line
With
is,
all due respect, he is our board attorney. He advises us and
well,
consequently.
he's advising you, Mayor. I'm speaking on what I know that are facts.
Well,
And so you
Mr.
could go. So the other thing I want to point out is that You know, Mrs. Christian, who I meant to say who should have got the position, I thought she was a very good candidate for the position, should have got the position, but the bottom line is we went through a whole hiring process. We got the whole town involved with this hiring process. And at any time, Mr. O'Gara, Mr. Aziz, Ms. Jackson, they knew that there was going to be a special meeting after the inaugurations to rehire Mr. Gerald, which I'm okay with that. But the bottom line is, the board members, according to their charter, the mayor could hold a special meeting. The pro temp, Mr. O'Gara at that time, could have held a special meeting. Or two aldermen could have held a special meeting before the hiring process, advising the other aldermen that let's postpone this hiring process so we don't waste people's time. And we'll make that decision after Mr. Aziz comes into office to determine which direction he was going to go in. And I will tell you that Mr. Aziz was the wild card. He could have made the decision to support two candidates that had fired Mr. Gerald, Ms. Sutherland and Mrs. Cooper, who are still sitting members, and some of the candidates that voted for Mr. Aziz,
3 minutes,
okay,
sir. Three
could have
minutes.
actually,
3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes.
I was interrupted, Mayor, by this point of order. Can I get my time for that?
How much time?
30 seconds?
25 seconds.
Okay, I'll take 20 seconds. That's okay with you.
20 seconds.
Okay, sir. So Mr. Aziz, you know, just undermines two of the aldermen that fired Mr. Gerald. Now he comes and he rehires him. He wasn't even back on the selection. He wasn't even on the hiring process.
Okay, sir. 20 seconds.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
So I'll be back.
We'll be waiting. Everybody will be treated the same. 3 minutes. And all we ask for is respect. And at the same time, we are not allowed to exchange with any citizen who's speaking. As we move on, I have our 2 presentations. And I would like for the board to join me. The first presentation is to Pastor Borcherding. The prayer that he prayed for us during our swearing-in ceremony on December 9th, again, so well written. After conferring with Pastor Borcherding, I offered to have this framed and signed by each board member, and at this time we would like to submit this or present this to him because he is moving away and he wants some things to remember the great Thomas Friendly for. Miss Christie, you getting this? We give you time. We give you time. We give you time. Alderman Sutherland has agreed to have Pastor Borcherding read this prayer one more time. So with your indulgence, we will ask him to do it again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for this. If our prayers, my prayers, all of our prayers draw our hearts and our minds to God, that's what I would hope for. So this was the prayer. Almighty, gracious, and loving God, we begin this evening, December 9th, 2019, by acknowledging and honoring you, Lord. You alone are the creator and sustainer of the entire universe and of each of our lives. It is you who raise up kings and presidents and leaders at every level of society, and it is you who bring them down, all to the end of accomplishing your purposes and bringing glory to your name. And so we thank you for each one of these men and women who are being sworn in tonight. Larry Dobbins as mayor, Tamar Aziz, Sonia Hooper, Jackie Jackson, James O'Gara, and Frederica Sutherland as members of the Board of Aldermen. Thank you for each one of them being willing to be servant leaders in this community. Thank you for their willingness to give sacrificially, to put what is best for Spring Lake ahead of any individual agendas. Lord, enable them to work together as a team. In place of critical spirits, may there be constructive, cooperative spirits. In place of temptations to undermine or embarrass one another, may they be characterized as respecting and valuing each other, benefiting as a group as they receive difference of opinion and approach from each other and the citizens of this community. Help them to respond with grace to the slings and arrows and criticisms that will certainly come their way, as they do to any who are strong and bold in their leadership. In the midst of a world, a nation, a state, and a town that sees so much anger, hatred, and bitterness, so much divisiveness, so many expressions of evil, we ask that your hand may be strongly on these men and women, so that under their leadership, Spring Lake might increasingly be seen as a beacon of light, of hope, of positive change, and of unity. Tonight, instead of asking you, God, bless America and Spring Lake, we ask that by your grace and enabling, America and Spring Lake in particular will bless you. All of this we pray together for your honor and glory of your name, O God.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Graves, we have a presentation for the gymnasium. I'm sorry, for the recreation center. There's a group of seniors who work out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at the recreation center, and they give quality time, and the recreation center gives them quality time. This is the first opportunity we've had to do this. So the All About Fitness 7 o'clock crew, they're donating a clock to the recreation center, and they desire that you hang this in a prominent place. Yes, sir. I guess they can see it.
Now you can put your other one in the kitchen.
Right.
I can sing the same time, I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna think about it, everything
Is Ms. Gross here tonight? Ms. Gross is not here to talk about the 2020 census. But before Ms. Harris goes, we want to thank Terry Lynn for doing such a wonderful job with the national anthem. She deserves another round of applause. Okay, item 9C, the wastewater treatment plant FEMA summary, Mr. McCollum.
Mayor, Board, thank you for allowing me to speak just for a second. Mr. McConnell was a longtime engineer for the town of Spring Lake, and he knows the wastewater treatment plant better than anybody. He basically, we were his first client. So he can tell you all about it. So he's going to present tonight what we've been working on since the hurricane on FEMA, the payment options and so forth, sir.
Thank you.
Mayor, board members, I appreciate you having me here tonight. I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of summarize where we are with the FEMA reimbursement for the damages done to the plant. And the town actually has some options on how to move forward. Some of these I think are very exciting for the town. I just want to give you the options, and I'll be staying after if anybody has any additional questions afterwards, or if they want to ask questions as we go on. But basically, this is a picture of the plant. If any of you, I know some of you have been down there, but this is the plant during the flooding, right after the, there was a tremendous amount of damage, as you can see right here. It was not pretty. I know the town's gone through a lot since Hurricane Florence to get back on its feet, to rebound and everything. But and the people at the plant have done a tremendous job of getting it back online and meeting the permit limits. I'd like to just say that what I'm going to present to you is some of the offers the amounts that's available to the town, and the offers that FEMA is making and is in the process of making. An error we found. But these following, the individuals up here have all been actively involved since the hurricane. There's been an extensive amount of meetings with FEMA, pushing FEMA to maximize the amount the town can get. They've been very cooperative and helpful. There's been endless amounts of paperwork, stacks of them, documenting the damages, documenting options so that the town could get the funding allowed for them. So I think it's important that these people be recognized. Okay, Hurricane Florence was in September 2018, and obviously caused major flooding to the town's wastewater plant. Virtually all systems had extensive damage at the plant. That included the electrical system, mechanical equipment, lab equipment, building contents, and miscellaneous damages throughout. Okay, what's been done today is the necessary repairs to keep the plant operational. Okay, that's facility basically operational, and it is meeting the permit limits. Not all the repairs have been made, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute, because if you do repairs, your plant is relatively old. So there's some options, and I'm going to go into that. You can have the plant fixed, or there may be some other options available. But basically, to date, only the necessary repairs were done to keep the go back. If we can keep the plant operational, and the staff at the plant has done a tremendous job of meeting limits, even in spite of some of the equipment not being fully repaired. Part of it is waiting for the unnecessary repairs until a decision is made by you folks on how to go with the funding, okay? I'm going to explain that in a minute, the options that the town, that lies before the town, the board members to make. Okay, there's basically two parts that FEMA is involved in. One is to pay for those repairs to get the plant up to where it was prior to Hurricane Florence, okay? Then there's also what's called mitigation, okay? If you repaired the plant back to its original condition, and you had that same flood event, you would have damages again, because that plant is not protected. So mitigation is the term that's used. How do you protect that plant that if you had that same flood event, that you could maintain and protect the equipment within that plant? So we looked at basically three options. One was try to raise the equipment. That really wasn't feasible. The basin's space here at a little above grade, about 3-4 feet above ground. So based on that, the wall, the structure would not really, it really isn't feasible to raise the plant or the equipment. One is to build a concrete wall around the plant, okay, with a floodgate. So if you were to have a similar flood, you close the floodgate and then you keep the water out. The second item, the third item, is basically an earthen berm. You would build basically a mound around the facility to keep the water out. I'm gonna go into some of the other items involved in the earthen burn. That was selected as the most cost effective, and FEMA actually agreed to this. Some of the, this was based on modeling that we had to do to show how the flood would be affected, because if you had a berm that's now in the floodway, how's that gonna affect the levels of the water should you have the identical flood? Let's go back one more. Also, the maintenance of the berm, though, because if you were to build the berm, although it would protect the plant with some other modifications, there's some concern with some of the staff, and rightfully so, that now you have a berm with a side slopes that has to be mowed, maintained, things like that. So there was some concerns with that. The earthen berm would basically have a 3-to-1 slope on the sides, 5-foot width at the top. And when you come into the facility, there'd basically be a floodgate, okay? That gate would normally be open. If there's gonna be a similar flood event, you have a significant amount of warning. The floodgate could then be closed, sealed up. But then you say, okay, wait a minute, we have pipes coming into the wastewater plant. What about when those manholes get submerged? Isn't water coming in? So we have to add, also think of a flood event you have in theoretically significant range. We have to add dewatering pump stations outside the basic treatment area. We have to have valves on the sewer so that would limit the amount of wastewater that comes in, allow the sewer to back up, because you can't, otherwise you'd flood from within. You know, the water would come in the sewer and flood the structure. There'd also be stormwater, the stormwater drainage system would have to be expanded to collect any water, rain that came through, to pump it up. Go back one. This just shows you schematically how what the berm would look like. Obviously, it's a pretty significant structure at a significant cost. The figure on the left shows you the plant aerial view with the berm around in the hatched area, and the one on the right, it shows you some of the modeling that was done to show the extent of the flooding. Okay, there's basically three decisions to be made, okay? Normally what FEMA would do is they'll pay direct costs. So the town can elect to have the equipment that has not been repaired, basically dollar for dollar. There's really no risk to the town. They get what's to replace the existing equipment that needs to be fixed, and that's about it. The next is what's called a fixed cost offer, okay? I'm gonna go into a minute. The direct cost has a lot of administrative costs. FEMA, to minimize their costs and also allow the municipalities, if they want to use, if they can use that money more efficiently to do other things with it, they've come up with what's called a fixed term or fixed cost offer. The last item is basically an alternative project. If you get the funding, you can actually go for a request an alternative project. It may or may not get approved, but that's the option that, these are the options that are presented. Most people, you know, hopefully you don't have to ever have to deal with FEMA, as we all know, but if you do, the traditional way is a direct cost, okay? You get a piece of equipment fixed, it costs $100, FEMA, once you show the receipts and everything. And some of the costs, some of the repairs that have been made have been done this way. You get reimbursed for the money that was there, minus, let's say, the insurance money. Town submits invoices and FEMA reimburses the cost of repairs. Okay, they pay the actual cost of repairs. It is significant, as you can ask some of the people I mentioned in the first page, the amount of administration, the bookkeeping, the cost of every little thing that's done. The record keeper on that can be significant. The fixed cost offer is basically, in working with FEMA, the people in the first page, and us, we've worked it to get, that they give us a fixed cost offer that not only included the repairs, but the mitigation repairs, okay? Costs were evaluated to prepare cost estimates, so we had to do cost estimates so they could make an offer. FEMA has made a lump sum offer to the town. However, we found, and I'm going into this in a minute, we found some errors in there in working with the town. There was an error. We're working with them, and they've agreed to increase the amount of the offer. So I'll touch on that in a minute. And the next one is with the fixed cost, the town is responsible for or benefits from difference. So if you take a lump sum offer and the repairs go above their offer, those additional costs are the burden of the town. On the other hand, if you make the repairs and you do it efficiently, then the town has those, keeps the difference, okay? The town is responsible for the difference of whether it's a lump sum minus the actual cost. One advantage of this is less administration, okay? This is the record keeping, the bookkeeping of every little penny, and as I think many in the town have gone through, it's not as expensive because they basically give you the offer. Assuming you accept the lump sum offer, okay, for mitigation and repairs, there is the option, and we're talking with FEMA, it has to be applied for, and it may or may not get approved. But you can accept if you accept the fixed cost offer, you can then apply for an alternative project, okay? You can make the necessary repairs to the current facility, just not all the money, but enough to help going. And you could use, let's say, the remaining funds towards a new wastewater plant. Your plan is relatively old. If you look at the month as a rule, if you're above 85, as you hit 85%, you have to do a facility plan and plan to expand the plant or build a new plant. In some months you're above that, and some you're below. You're anywhere between 65%, and I think in 1 or 2 you're up in the 90s. So depend upon the season. If you have a lot of rain, some water goes in the manholes, you may be on the high end. The drier months you're going to be on the lower end because there's less water inflow, infiltration, the rainwater, the storm water coming into the system. The thing to consider is your current facility is aged in their capacity. FEMA may require scope of work change for mitigation should you go to the alternative project. So there's a little bit of unknown with the, and until you apply, you don't know how it's going to go, to be very honest with you. That's the read we've gotten in talking with the FEMA officials. They've been very helpful, but you have to go through that process. To show you the differences, there's 2 columns. There's one on the left and there's one on the right, okay? This is what's called the CEF factor. So the column on the left, if you look at the damages to the plant, there was about $1.9 million worth of damages. Just under $300,000 have been done to date, okay? So the remaining repairs to the plant are somewhere around $1.6 million, okay? If you look to the right, when you add the CEF factors, that basically counts, let's say, the administration, the management, all these other factors that go in. So basically, for the damages to the plant, they've made a fixed amount offer is almost $3.8 million. Okay, so letter was received by the town with an offer just for the damages of about just under $3.8 million. In the mitigation amount, when you look at building the berm, that had a rough cost without the CEF factors of about $1.7 million, almost $1.8. Okay, so right now the offer that the town received, I'm trying to do math in my head, but it's right around $5.5 million. Now, what we found out was when we reviewed the offer with the town officials, they did not include the CE factors. The town's been in contact to try to get that amount raised. We won't know until they actually do, and they're working on that number now. But if you take a similar ratio, we're hoping it's gonna be well above probably $6 to possibly $7 million. Okay, so that's a significant amount of money. That on the right, that means you take the fixed cost offer. Okay? I put this up here. Your plant right now is rated at 1.5 million gallons. Okay, that's what your plant is permitted for. To increase the capacity of that plant, we took various bids over the last couple of years, and we just did a high and a low. You know, some of it depends on the type of plant, what type of treatment it is, where the location. You know, a plant in a more urban setting might be a little more than a. But there's kind of a range, and this is kind of a ballpark. So if you look at to get I just say if you double the capacity, for example, at 3 million, you're about 17 million. So you have close to maybe a third of what you're getting, 6, 7 out of the 17 million. So if you wanted to increase the plant, you could potentially have a plant built at grade above in the area next to where the existing plant is, that field, or potentially come closer up Manchester Road. Those are just a couple options that may be available. And we point this out because in looking at the plant, yeah, you may have some new pieces and parts at the existing plant, but you still have your foundation, the concrete is wearing, you still have an older plant. So this is just to give you an idea that you could use, if they accepted if you wanted to get a lump sum and go for an alternative project, it'd be a significant amount to put down towards a new plant. And then other types of funding, whether it be USDA or economic development type funds, those type of things. So if you wanted to, you want to track business or you want to track housing, you could get that. I guess there's a couple decisions, and the FEMA's requested that the town have a decision by February 10th. However, since the town can ask for an extension of working with the staff, because the offer that made didn't include the CEF factors. But there's two decisions to make. Do you want to take the direct cost for the replacement of the equipment that was there? There's essentially no risk to the town. They pay you, but there's a fair amount of administrative costs to administer those, to document everything. Or does the town want to take a fixed cost offer? Secondly, if you take the fixed cost offer, would you want to apply for maybe an alternative project to get a new plant, a new facility? So these are the options that, the town has before, and I think with the hard work of the town, some of the staff, these options are available. That's a town this size, $6-7 million is a lot of money for anybody, and I think to consider the options is it's in your hands. I can take questions now. I will also stay after the meeting if anybody wants to ask me questions afterwards.
Here's one from Mayor Pro Tem.
So I have a question. If we take the fixed option, are you suggesting that we repair our plant and then also build another plant, or not repair this plant and build a new plant?
There are some things that you probably want to repair anyways to make it easier for the operators. The operators, to be very honest with you, are doing a tremendous job with the plant that's kind of like the old Chevy that's looking down the road with, so there's certain things that you would want to do, but you wouldn't maybe bring everything up to speed because then you depleted some of that money for the fixed offer.
And how much money do you think that would take?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to sit down and I could get that for you.
And then what's the advantage of having the bigger plant, like to have the twice the capacity that we have now?
If you look at your flow rates into the plant, you're averaging, I think last year, I think it was little over 60. What was the percent?
I believe it's 68%.
But you're at 68%, so you're approaching, at 85, you can't take on any new connections until you have a plan in place to add capacity.
Yeah.
So if the town were to, let's say, say an industry wanted to come into town, a wet industry, or say there's a big development, you'd be limited to some extent on what you could do, because if your plant doesn't have that capacity, they can't move in.
So pardon my ignorance, but if we build a new plant, what happens to our old plant?
It could be mothballed or, decommissioned.
Do we ever need two plants? Would there be any advantage of that?
There really isn't. There's some equipment at that plant, to be very honest with you, that, if you upgrade, say you built a new plant, you would look to move some of it. Some of the equipment, like the silos over 20 years old, basically has no useful life, basically. If you look at some of the things, for example, like there's a septic receiving station.
Yeah.
That's a couple years old, that can be readily moved. So there are limited amounts of pieces and parts that could be refurbished and incorporated into a new plant.
So February 10th is coming up pretty close. Is there any way we could have an estimate of all the additional funding we could get from other sources by then?
There's not a lot of, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of grants like through DEQ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of the free money is mostly through economic development.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so any grants are very limited on what you can get. So most of your grants would be, say, if a new, I believe, say an industry were to come, and you're trying to attract a business and you have to extend the sewer line or add a capacity, you can get about 10,000. I think I'll double check, but I think there's a fixed number. I'll just throw out a number like $10,000 on the quote. So if you had a plant that, let's say, had 100 people, 100 times, 10,000 is $1 million. There are programs out there that we'll work with, programs, there may be some golden leaf money.
Okay.
If you look at the, one of the, USDA has a program with either low interest, very low interest, that's a lot easier funding, to be honest with you, than DEQ has revolving loans. The trouble with that is the extensive work you have to do to prepare for that. Sometimes that push everything back a year or two.
Okay. So what you're saying is $7 million is what you estimate we'd get, and $1.5 million is what we would have to spend on repairing the plant that we have now. So that's about 5.5, and then if the new plant costs about $17 million, you're saying we'd have to spend roughly $12.5 million?
If you go back to a couple of slides, that's a good question. There's a lot of numbers that threw out.
That's not a lot of money.
If you go to the one that had the cost in it, it's probably about 7 or 8. Keep going. Just do that. Okay, right there. If you click on that, if you look at the numbers on the left, okay? If you go direct cost, if you take the direct cost, okay, without upgrading the plant, the total estimate uncompleted is about 1.6. If it goes under, you don't get anything. If it goes over, they cover you. If you take the fixed cost, that means the burdens on the town, you get, just to fix the plant would be 3.8. Okay, so you get basically the top number total, minus what's ever been, if there's any been paid. With the 3.8, that's what you would get to basically repair the plant. Okay, now the next item is the mitigation, the berm. If you were to build the berm and you go direct cost, they're going to give you the number to the left. if you had the CEF back, the lump sum, that's what we're trying to get for. But if it came in over the 1.7, 1.8, they'd pay that. If it came in under, then they're only gonna pay you for that amount.
And would we have to build the berm? Sorry, would we have to build the berm if we were gonna build a new plant as well?
If you build a new plant, that's an excellent question. If you say you wanna build a new plant, you have to apply for an alternative project and say, in our opinion, by building a new plant, we can have a new plant, we're willing to, invest the money to get a newer plant, maybe a larger plant, outside the floodplain, but we're gonna use that berm for it, then it goes up for their review.
Sorry, last question, how long do you think it would take to build a new plant?
It would, basically, the design and everything, you could do probably you could get everything done and permitted within about a year, so it'd probably you'd be about another year out. Construction would be a year to year and a half maybe.
Thank you.
If you had a good contract, If, one other one, just to help you with if you go to that other, it has the graph. This has kind of a range of whatever size plant you want. I picked, 3 because it's double the size.
Yeah.
If you had, let's say, an industry that wanted to move in and you knew they had, okay, I'm a wet industry, I'm doing salads or something, or canning or whatever, so a water intensive manufacturer, they may request much more than the 3. So this is just a range that we could work with the town immediately, real quickly try to get a handle on what size plant the town wants.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Sutherland, then, Ms. Alderman O'Gara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of it's been asked. It was about the capacity. You stated it was 68% now, that the capacity of the wastewater?
68% capacity was for the last year, I believe.
Average of the last year, including but it's gone up to over 80% and higher than that in several months.
Okay, so I have a difference of 12, and it's gone over in the last few months. So if we were to get a new plant, what would be your recommendation so it won't go up to the 80? That's what I got here. That it would be feasible for the town, because you also stated that the stormwater was emptied, dumped in that as well. So we can go forward, and you did give us a deadline date, so we'll know what we're looking at. Because what you're saying is it was 68, and then it went over last to about 80. So with a new plant, what would be feasible for this town, as well as you said if a plant came, that we need to utilize it?
Yeah, I'll take the numbers right off of you. In 2018, the plant, the average capacity was at 68%.
Right.
In 2019, which was a little drier year, the average was, December's missing, so I'd have to crank the numbers to see if that's actually, it looks like that may be 1 month short. But when I look at the monthly capacity for the last year, 81, 69, 72, 71, 55, 55, 51, 55, 59, 56, 59, and then December's not here. Typically December's a real wet, is often a wet month. So if you look at it, during the drier months, there's not as much coming in like during the summer. The wet time is typically the fall, winter, and spring. So several months are either right at, if you look at last year, there were 2 months that were above the 85%.
So with the new plant, if we should decide to go with a new plant, what would be your recommendation? That we wouldn't have to, I know it fluctuates depending on the rain, the storm water, if we have a flood, if we have a hurricane.
Right,
But to be able to sustain it for future reference, if we're gonna invest that kind of money, what would be your recommendation?
My recommendation would be to, in all probability, is to meet with the people that are doing the economic development, see if there's any potential wet industries coming in, because that has a big significance.
Exactly.
You know, does the town wanna bring in jobs? Does the town wanna attract, wet industry? Towns are looking, industries looking to oftentimes move. You have a good workforce, it's a nice community here. There's a lot of things that Spring Lake can attract people. So some of the questions, I would come back to you and your staff, like the economic, if someone's knocking on the door and say, we can bring in the business, then you're gonna wanna go, and it's a wet industry, you wanna go to a higher amount. If it's a drier industry, you may hedge it or have it so it could be expanded in the future.
Right, or even just keep what we have, because we don't have anything for future reference, keep what we have and just fix it. Because not trying to pass on, our taxes is already high enough to the town of Spring Lake. So I understand that FEMA's gonna, give us more, it's still out there that we can go out for more money, but we just need to know where we stand before we invest that type of money. As well as you said, it's some type of grants out there, but we have not tried to utilize it to find out.
Some of those,
Just options you putting out here right now, a presentation to let us know the conditions. And I think that FEMA did, they was awarded over $2 billion for North Carolina. And we was awarded some money to fix that plant. You did say some stuff was fixed.
yeah, that's what this is. The town was given a letter, what was it, the last couple of weeks, Butch?
We got it, within the last week.
Yeah, within the last week, FEMA came out and said, okay, we're gonna give you, 5.5 million?
4.8.
4.8. We went ahead and said, okay, so you need to add the CF for the loan, to give you the option, it's your decision. So they're right now calculating what they can add on to that to give us the CEF factors. And I'm until we get the number, I can't guarantee anything, but if
Well,
they
would
don't.
you think they wouldn't give it to us for some reason?
Oh,
Additional?
no, they've already told us, they made a mistake when they offered.
Oh, it was a mistake.
Yeah, and we caught it with the town, said, hey, they didn't add the CEF factors to it. So we went back to FEMA with the town and said, time out, guys, you didn't add the CEF. And then their first response was, no, we can't do that. We made them look further, and then they came back and said, okay, we're gonna give you another offer. We haven't got that updated amount yet. That's why that one slide has it non-fixed. As soon as we get that, or as soon as the town gets that, it can be made, available to everybody.
Well, do you know when we're gonna probably get it? Because you gave us a deadline date of February.
Well,
So we can make a sound decision on what we have instead of just.
and that's very, that's very reasonable.
Ms. Sullivan, we reached out to them today, they have not returned our call. What I'm gonna do is send an email tomorrow to them requesting an extension. And that's what you always do, is to request an extension, because when Gary and Vern talked to them last week, they said, we'll get it back in a couple of days. Well, we knew we had the board meeting tonight. So we're hoping to get it tomorrow, but it may be Friday, maybe next week, we do not know.
Okay, well, let us know so we can make a sound decision, because that's a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely.
When you get it and you stating, well, now you're gonna send an email, so that's good, so you do a paper trail, and
Right.
then we can make a sound decision with the information that you're bringing, to go along with this presentation. But what was the date, February, you need?
February the 10th, which is your next board meeting is scheduled for February the 10th. But we prefer them to provide an extension, since they're the one that did not put all the factors in the factor.
Right, that's why to close up some of the holes here. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, Alderman, yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Gary, I got a short question. In my mind, I'm saying new location, so we don't have to mess with the burn or anything like that. We don't have to worry about flooding. But I'd also like something with double capacity. Can you give me a rough estimate how this money will come in to help.
Yes, if you look at that, that's a good question. If you look, you're at 1.5 with the yellow and the blue are to the left. If you double the capacity, that's $3 million, 3 million gallons per day. 3 million gallons based on this is somewhere plus or minus, what, anywhere, say about 17.5. So you're gonna, you know, for all intents and purposes, if the grant sticks, you may have $12 million, you may have, some of these numbers are gonna be dependent upon the plan and the bid price. But you're getting a down payment of basically, you know, $6 million. So, you know, whatever that final amount, we're gonna know next week, minus any repairs you do, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson answered my question. I wanted to make sure that we know the time requirement for the board to make a set of informed decisions. I'm glad we have requested the extension of time. We expect that to be granted since while we're waiting for the missing number from FEMA, correct? Because otherwise, February 10th is this board's next regular meeting.
Once the award offer came to the town, it was sent right to us. We went through it. We said, "What about this here?" We went back and forth. We called up FEMA, and, you know, so it's in motion, and that's a lot of money. I'm sure they're saying too. So they're going through and trying to come up with the factors to make you know, the appropriate offer.
I would request, on behalf of the board, when we have that missing CEF number in hand, and you all are in a better position to make an informed recommendation based on your best professional judgment, be ready, please, to do that.
Okay.
In a timely way, after talking with the town's economic development director about what maybe capacity needs we might expect in the future, after talking some more with the finance director about the town's financing capacity, if a sound decision might be to look toward building a new plant, along with your best guesstimate about outside funds that might be available, and also talk with Mr. Garner about operational needs. Come ready to make a sound set of recommendations about the best long-range, cost-effective decisions. Please.
And a good halfway point for all of this might be the 3rd of February, a week before the decision is made, and today's date. That the board and all interested parties can come together to decide, go with what the board decides. Say again? Okay. Well, we can discuss that at a later time. But if the 10th is the deadline, then somewhere between now and then. Yeah. No, it's not. Okay, there are no more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, feasibility study for Coosa Farm Church, Mr. Hankins.
Mayor, I don't believe the Cumberland County Planning Department representatives are here, is that correct? But what you have in your agenda package are materials that constitute a report from the town clerk, as the statutes require, with the assistance of the Cumberland County Planning Department. It's a feasibility study. Citizens have the right under the statutes to request annexation of their property voluntarily by filing a petition. And the town received a petition last fall. This is a non-contiguous or satellite piece of property. It's not contiguous to the town. But the statutes authorize the board to annex property that is not contiguous under a petition if it's within 3 miles from the primary corporate limits not closer to another town, and the town determines that we can provide services to the property. So this report is that feasibility study, which shows you that this property, the petition and the property meet the requirements of the statutes. If we now follow through with the rest of the required procedure, which is a public hearing after published notice, and then the board would have the authority, if you see fit, to adopt the annexation ordinance to annex the property. So, Mr. Mayor, I think between the manager and me, we can probably answer questions. Your next step is to set a date for a public hearing, and before that date, the clerk or deputy clerk would publish notice of that public hearing, and then anyone who wishes to come and speak, property owner or others, could do that at the public hearing. I suggest that maybe if one of you wants to make such a motion, the best time to set a public hearing on the question might be your last regular meeting in February, which is February 24th. That would be action to set that date for the public hearing.
I make a motion that we set the public hearing for the Cruciform Church annexation for February 24th.
Alderman,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question concerning the package. Talking about the feasibility study.
yes, go ahead.
Talking about the feasibility study and information that's in the package. So still in order. With the feasibility study, we had requested, the police department said they can service the area so that our citizens know the area is on Pantry Lane, going through the different departments. The fire station said they as well could service the area. Fire has no problem. I was a little concerned about the recreation center. I don't know what they would have in it, but there's no problem of the annexation as well. But when I look at page 1 concerning the water, says they have already connected to the town of Spring Lake water system. But then it says the sewage. It says no sewage is available on Pantry Lane. So, during the feasibility study, in order for that to be a stand-up operation, how does that work with no sewage?
It's a very good question.
Yes, sir.
The voluntary annexation statutes for contiguous and non-contiguous annexations do not clearly provide a requirement that sewer must be provided. The other set of statutes do. And there's no case that the appellate courts have decided so far that says absolutely the town must provide sewer. Many properties are continuing to be served by the septic tank that's already there or a replacement septic tank. And unless the property owner eventually presses the issue and talks with the town about extending the sewer service, partially perhaps at their cost, then in many cases it just goes on and on that way for years.
I'm just asking, so I would like to look at this, it's been some years ago, but I know we was mandated to get hooked up to city sewer. And I understand that some areas that still may not be, but with that being a new facility, it just kind of puzzled me that they don't have sewage. And if they hooked up to the Spring Lake water and all that goes together, then why would they not? And why would it not be a requirement during the planning that they would have sewage, because it's a new facility. It's not an old one where some of these old buildings that they still just have, they're not hooked up to city sewage.
Provision of
Septic
public,
tank.
provision of public sewer is an absolute requirement under the statutes. When the city annexes property without a petition, the General Assembly changed the law, and that's very restrictive. It's virtually impossible to do that now.
Right.
So that's really no longer on the table. Apart from that, apart from annexation, towns do have authority, and this board previously may have done this, to adopt an ordinance requiring connection of properties that are already within the town to public sewer, if it's available. The town may have, I see Tim nodding.
Yeah, it's already there.
The board adopted that.
Yeah, we did already.
This property, you know, when it comes into the town, I have to go back and look at that ordinance and see what it says and see whether that ordinance would apply to this property. Probably not, since public sewer is not available.
I mean, we had extensive conversations with the church, both during the building and during this process. They already put a septic tank in, and they knew this from the beginning, that this wasn't going to be a part of the system, because it would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for us to run sewer along Pine Tree Lane to service this property. And he understands that that's not feasible for the town at this time. So he was involved with the process. He knew this going in before he even started building the building.
So the simple answer is the property owner understands the practical difficulties and cost, and is not requesting public sewer, and the town is not required to provide it.
And that's my question. So for future reference, since he understands, and I guess it's in writing somewhere, that we're not gonna be liable later, because if he wants to annex into the town, and that's what all the other facilities and the businesses and the homes, are required, because we did pass it, they have, sewerage,
Well,
then
they're
is it
required,
something?
if available, if sewer is available to the property, they're required to hook to it, not if it's not available.
So what I'm saying is, if we're gonna take this task on to annex it, and which I have no problem, but I just wanna make sure that for future reference, that we're not held accountable, and you said he was aware of it,
Yes, ma'am.
that for future reference, that, you know,
I mean,
this is all on him with his septic tank and.
It's an all new facility, new septic tank,
Yes.
everything was installed. I mean, we had meetings with him up front before any construction was built, and so he knew that from the beginning.
Okay. All right, I
Is there a
just
motion?
done your due diligence.
I know, I meant a second. All in favor, sign of aye. Aye. For a public hearing on February 24th. Okay, item 9F, since E was deleted, Mr. Watson and Mr. Gerald, audit update.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. We have completed the OPEB report. It has been sent to Kavanaugh Associates in Atlanta, Georgia. That report will be done by the middle of February. Once that report is done, it goes back to the auditor, and then the auditor will complete the audit.
Can you do that?
Yes, the OPEB report, that has to be done by a third person party. This is Kavanaugh and Associates. They're out of Atlanta, Georgia. They have gotten the OPEB report. The OPEB report is a report that contains payroll information, benefits, things of that nature. It goes to them, they make their report is turned in then to our auditor, and then our auditor will complete the audit.
And what was the timeline again?
It should be the middle of February.
Alderwoman Sutherland.
Okay.
Oh, was that Alderwoman Cooper?
Yes, so I'm a little confused because I think it was in September, we were told we would have those reports within 30 to 45 days, and by Mr. Watson, and this is much more than 30 to 45 days.
Right, I wasn't here in September, so I don't know. So when I came in,
But this is supposed to be both of you.
Okay.
Is it a dual presentation, correct, Mr. Watson?
Mayor and Board, that September date was assuming everything went streamlined. We have one of the two reports that came back very efficiently. The other one is the one that's taken so long, the longer one. The first one is the one for the law enforcement officers portion. And they had said that it would be about between the range of end of January to the middle of February. That's what they told us for this particular one.
Do you have records of those conversations? Is any of that in writing?
I've got an email that says that they received it and it will be done by the end of January to the middle of February right there.
Okay, so then we'll be held into the letter in the middle of February, of the date.
Yes, as a late stage.
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay.
you. Yes. Hold on, sir.
Right.
So we get the OPEB report in the middle of February. And then that has to go to the auditors. And then they can complete the audit, is that correct?
Yeah, what they end up doing, Ms. Cooper, is they interpolate and extrapolate and put that into footnotes and the schedules. And they have to wait for the numbers that are in that OPEB actual report to put in their footnotes and schedule.
And this is for the 17-18 audit? Is that
Yes, ma'am.
So when do you expect to get all the information together for the 18-19 audit?
Well,
Because, you know, from what I researched and talking to a gentleman at the league, the one that you sent us an email about, he says that, you know, we should be have a schedule already for this year's, and, you know, so that means that we are almost to the point where we should be starting on the third audit. So when will you get the information from OPEB for the 18-19 audit?
The 18-19 audit, we sent a letter to the state treasurer's office last week, and Ms. Webb should have sent you a copy of it. And in there it stated that we expect to have the 18-19 audit completed by the end of May.
So you've already requested the information from OPEB for 18-19. You've already received that?
You can't send it to them for the 18-19 until they give me the information for the 17-18. And once I've received it, then that will be complete writing and it'll be sent to them.
So then I guess my question is, if it's taken this long to get the paperwork for the OPEB report for 17-18, how is it you can be sure that we will have the OPEB report and the audit for 18-19 done? I mean, it's taken several months to get this OPEB report. So,
As I stated previously, Ms. Cooper, the Hurricane Florence is gone and done with. So they had to really have a lot of time that we could spend on that now instead of hurricane-related items.
so what you're saying is you just never sent off, you just never requested the original one for 17-18. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am, but they've had it, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just trying to understand how is it we're gonna get that OPEB report so fast for the 18-19?
They tell me that they will have it back in time to complete the end of May day.
Mr. Watts, maybe it would help if you were to get a calendar and get all of this information, going back to the 17-18, and just go down the calendar, go down the dates, and fill in the expectations for those dates. You know, based on what you know,
Right.
and what you have communicated with people. Because now, like she said, we're talking about what, 3 years? Yes, Mr. Hank.
Mr. Mayor, I know the discussion about all these different fiscal years can be a little confusing to the normal people who are not sitting here. I want to point out that Mayor Dobbins signed and the town sent a response letter to the local government commission last week. Local Government Commission is the agency in the state treasurer's office where Mr. Watson worked many years ago when I first met him, that oversees the finances of local governments. The town had received a letter inquiry from the Local Government Commission earlier asking about the status of these audit reports for the 2 separate fiscal years, and asking about timeline, expected timeline for completion and submission of the audit reports, and the town's remedial plan to make sure that future audit reports are submitted on a more regular basis, or timely basis. So Mr. Watson drafted that letter, discussed it with the mayor and me. We made some suggested changes to it. The mayor was comfortable signing it. We sent that letter. May I ask whether that letter is posted on the town's website?
Each board member got a copy of it.
I think we need to make that letter available publicly. It is obviously a public record. Certainly available if someone comes to town hall and asks for it, but to facilitate access might be a very good thing to post it to the website. It lays all of this out about the problem and what town staff and the actuaries and the independent auditors are doing to address the problem and the expected completion dates. And it also does a pretty good job of laying out the town's remedial plan to avoid this in the future.
Thank you, sir. Alderman Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly, I think, well, maybe I'll talk about it when I get, we still gotta get to 10B.
Yeah, we're right at 9F right now.
Okay, I can wait till 10B.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Item 10A, discussion of personnel manual appendix D. Alderman Sutherland has your name here.
Oh,
10A. Yes.
Oh, for the longevity, for future reference, according to, we did speak with the town attorney as well, as any employee, if they worked during, served during the whole year, I just feel as a board member and for the employees, stating, when we talk to Mr. Hankin, everyone should be treated the same, that they should be able to get the longevity as well as the bonus because they served the whole year. Because if someone else is coming on the board and they only been here for like 5 days or whatever, they get the bonus, but not the person who served the whole year. And he said he had to bring it before the board, so that's what that is.
Okay, is that it?
Yes, sir. So do we need to make a motion to put it in, what we need to do? I mean, I spoke to the attorney, I spoke to, finance director, the town manager, Mr. Zell. Mr. Zell said it's up to the board member to request it. I did. Mr. Butch wouldn't kind of listen to me. He said he'd already spoke to the mayor. So this is where we are, so I'm bringing it to the board so we can make a decision on it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure, let me explain the situation. When a person comes onto the board, that first day, when they get in December, they receive a Christmas bonus. And then when they leave the board, they don't receive a Christmas bonus. So the last Christmas bonus you ever receive, you receive in the very beginning when you first get into the board. I don't think the town of Spring Lake is so overburdened with tax revenue that we need to cut more checks for politicians. I think we need to be good stewards of taxpayer money, and there's no reason to give even more money to politicians. So.
Only thing I'm asking, as the town attorney said, not taxpayer money, because if we're gonna talk about taxpayer money, whenever we utilizing it to take classes or whatever the case may be, we need to make sure that we're careful when we're taking trips or whatever we do with taxpayer dollar. I agree with you, sir. But what I'm saying, I'm not trying to be debatable, I'm just trying to be fair, and that's why we spoke to our town attorney so we could. I'm only one person, but that's my thought process. If a person has served for a whole year.
Alderman O'Gara. And then Alderwoman Cooper.
I don't mean to be throwing the the attorney under the bus, but this is not an attorney decision. This is a board decision. And if we start doing this now, it would have to be retroactive. And there's quite a few people who would need to be writing a check for. Thank you.
Alderman Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think it was meant as a personal thing, because the way I understand it, it would also apply to employees, not just board members. I don't, I think some people are taking it as a personal, and I just think that as a policy for the town, it would be a good thing to do, not just for elected officials or politicians, as you said. It's just something to consider for the town, employees as well as elected officials.
Yeah, Pro Tem, and then we'll come to some resolution of this.
How could this affect employees? Are you saying that an employee who got fired in January would still receive a Christmas bonus for that year?
Yes, the town manager said yes.
Okay, so then I'm definitely against that. It doesn't make any sense why a town employee fired in January would receive a Christmas bonus for that year.
Why not? He served the whole year.
No, January.
Hold on. I think a reasonable solution to this is to either rewrite the policy that is in existence or write a new policy.
Yes, sir.
And that would take us to come to a consensus, write it, draft it, review it, edit, and then adopt the policy. On the agenda is for us to discuss this. So now we can end the discussion by agreeing to write a policy. Now, if any of us have something that we would like to write, then present it to the board and let us hear it, read it, see it, and make a modification to it. And then in maybe a month, we can come back and adopt the policy. Now, we're talking about Christmas bonuses, so we're still talking about what, 11 more months from now. So we have plenty of time to get it right. Going forward. Now, prior to this, I don't think we had anything in writing. And writing always stands longer and firmer than the word of mouth of what somebody once did. Okay, I think we agree to that. 10B, Alderwoman Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Requesting that we have the auditors, that the town taxpayer dollars were transparent. They need to know where their tax dollars are going. That we have our auditors, that we paid $16,000 a year for them to audit the town, to come and give the board a presentation, so that we're not guesstimating, as Ms. Cooper has stated, and I don't want to go over everything when she called Mr. Hankins has spoke, as well as Mr. Butch, when we said we had letters going out at this such and such time. We've been doing this now for town manager, you was not here, Mr. Durrell. We've been doing it now for over 6 to 7 to 8 months, that we've been talking about the same letters and what we have out there and what we're doing. And I think we're on the same team. We're trying to get to completion, that we can get our town going forward, that we're transparent, as you stated, to put the letter out as public record. But if we have that auditing firm that we hire, paying taxpayer dollars, to come out and give us a presentation, because they had not given us a hard copy of anything. They was coming on a regular basis every year in front of the board doing the presentation, had no problem until this last 2 years. And it's up to the board to request it. We called the league said they work for the town, they work for the board, and it's our request. So I am requesting, again, and it's already in the minutes, that we have our auditing firm to come out and give us a presentation of where they're staying. I understand it's been about the police, I understand it's been about the hurricane, I understand it's been about a whole lot of stuff. But if we put it in minutes, and they do work for the town, so I'm requesting that that firm, auditing firm that works for the town, come out and give us a presentation at our next board meeting.
Okay, so Mr. Gerald and Mr. Watson, can you expedite the auditors coming out to our next board meeting? And if they can't come to the next one, then perhaps the second one in the month of February. We would like to task you all with that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have reached the end of our items of importance. There being no more business, do I get a motion? Alderwoman Cooper.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
It has been moved. 2 seconds.
Nobody.
Okay, Alderman, O'Gara. It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. You heard the motion. Is for the question? All in favor, sign aye. Any opposed, sign nay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.